People exaggerate when they're scared. They mix up details. They add color. I wish I were doing that. I wish I could say I dreamed it. But there are nights when I wake up with the taste of diesel on my tongue and the echo of singing in my ears, and I remember every second. If you ever find yourself on a midnight bus and the driver slows at a stop you don't recognize, where there are no lights, no signs, no reason, do not get off. Don't even stand. Don't even look. Keep your head down and your seatbelt on. And if someone starts to hum, pretend you don't hear it. The night it happened, I was just trying to get home. Mom had called earlier, voice groggy from pain meds and stubborn pride. "It's outpatient, I told you. They'll take me home after. Don't waste the gas." But I heard the quiver under her warble. The bus was $35 and 7 hours of numb tailbone. I packed a backpack and a thermos and walked to the depot because my car's transmission had been dying for months and I was out of excuses. The station smelled like stale coffee and damp paper. A vending machine shuddered every time it spat out the same neon yellow bag of chips. The electronic board whispered pixelated routes and times, half of them late. People were shaped by their waiting, hunched, huddled, folded in headphones. I bought a ticket to Riverbend, checked the route on my phone twice, and watched my battery slide down like an hourglass. Bus 217 pulled in with a whine like a long-pained breath. The driver stepped down as if the steps remembered his weight. He had a face that looked carved rather than grown, flat planes, a nose set like a nail, eyes that reflected the station lights and blank coins. The name tag pinned to his shirt collar was scuffed and dented until the letters were difficult to read, like something he'd found and repurposed. Durr. Driver? Dean? I couldn't tell. Inside, the air was sweet and old, like someone had sprayed too much floral cleaner over a bed of exhaust. I took a seat 3 rows from the back on the right, the window seat. I've always liked to press my forehead to the glass and feel the hum of the road through it, the shaping of the world by momentum. The aisle seat went empty for a while, and then a woman in her 60s dropped into it with a neat sigh and a plastic grocery bag clutched to her chest. She smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs, my grandmother's old hall closet. "Headed far?" she asked. "Riverbend," I said. My mom had surgery. She nodded, a soft automatic compassion that required no more explanation. "Always at night, isn't it? The hard things." She patted the bag. "I'm bringing lemon bars to my daughter. She hates them, but they're what I can bake." The bus filled in slow increments. A man in a wrinkled suit with a briefcase he kept tapping like it was a metronome. A boy in a hoodie with a backpack stitched with band patches and a single safety pin catching the overhead light. A mother with a toddler whose eyes were too wide and too tired at the same time, his fingers around a plush rabbit so worn it was more memory than toy. An elderly couple, their heads bowed together in practiced intimacy as they shared earbuds. Now and then they smiled at the same silent beat. A woman in braids and a tan work jacket who watched the rest of us with the alert, steady gaze of someone who catalogs for a living. A man with hands like shovels and a sunburned forehead who looked like he'd fallen asleep standing up at a construction site and woke up here by mistake. A quiet trio of college kids whispering into the glow of a cracked phone. The driver climbed in without looking at any of us. The bus hissed as the doors drew themselves shut, like it was sealing all our breaths in a jar. The radio on the driver's dash crackled once, then again, then went still. The fluorescent bulbs above us buzzed the way road signs do when you pass under them at 60 miles an hour. And then we were moving. Night pulled us in like a tide. The station lights fell behind and the dark took over in wide swaths, broken by occasional gas stations with sickly green halos, truck stops with asphalt oceans. The highway made its long, easy promises. I texted Mom once. On my way. Get some sleep. A dot appeared, held, vanished. The phone dropped from 3% to 2%. When I opened my camera to take a picture of the reflection of my staring face for something to do, the screen rippled like heat does above a grill and showed, for a split second, a different bus interior. Worn red felt, brass poles, the letters Crown City Trans reversed in the glass of an unseen door. I blinked. The ripples flattened. My own bus came back into view. Its bland gray fabrics, its scuffed rubber floor. My own face staring back, a little paler than it had any right to be. Long rides make screens do that, my seatmate said, as if she'd watched the same thing. All the motion. Right. My voice was too bright. We passed a field strewn with hay bales wrapped in white plastic so they looked like fat body bags lined up as if for inspection. The toddler started to hum at a volume only children can find, a small, persistent melody that came from somewhere between his teeth and the rabbit he chewed on. The mother stroked his hair with a hand that was already halfway asleep. The elderly couple's earbuds leaked a different song, something tinny and cheerful and absurd, like a commercial jingle for cereal. I tried to doze, but the bus had a personality that resented it. Every time my chin dropped, the driver would tap the brake for no reason and send the weight of the world forward, or the engine would cough a little like an old smoker remembering the taste of clean air, or the fluorescent bulbs would stutter themselves toward the edge of darkness and then catch again, like clapping hands in a children's game. The woman in braids watched the driver the way I always watch people who are supposed to be responsible for me. She leaned into the aisle once, craning when the road curved and the windshield showed us the long black ribbon veering west. In the driver's reflection, his mouth moved. No sound came out. His lips formed words like they were practicing them in another room, like he was repeating something someone else said to him a long time ago and he hadn't quite got the intonation right. "Do you hear that?" the hoodie kid whispered to no one and everyone. "Hear what?" the briefcase man asked, irritated already, without looking up. The kid shook his head. "Nothing. Never mind." But he put his hood up, and he never took it down again. Mile markers kept their secrets. We crossed a bridge I didn't recognize and a river whose name my eyes never caught. The lowlands on either side gleamed with wetness where the moon made lakes out of ditches. A red-lit radio tower blinked in the distance, slow as a heartbeat. We slid past small towns that were all the same town. One main street, one diner with a flickering neon coffee cup, one statue of a soldier or a farmer or a horse, one set of stoplights that didn't change because they had no one to change for. And the whole time, the driver's mouth moved in that silent chant, opening and closing like fish do in pale aquariums, catching and releasing air, catching and releasing us. I got up once to use the bathroom. On the way, I steadied myself by the tops of the seats. People sleep heavy on buses. Their heads loll like flowers in a field after the wind has had its way. The bathroom smelled like a summer of porta-potties at a county fair. Someone, bored or furious or both, had scratched something into the thin metal of the mirror with a key. "Stay on." I touched the words like maybe they'd flake. The edges were fresh and sharp. Back in my seat, the lavender woman offered me a lemon bar and a napkin as if it could soak up the bad taste the bathroom left. "They'll just sit on her counter otherwise," she said, unwrapping one for herself with the resigned joy of a person who has made a peace treaty with sugar. "Thanks." The sugar cut the diesel and the fear in the back of my throat. Powdered snow on my tongue. We ate like conspirators. After midnight, the bus quieted into a different kind of silence. The cheap, thin quiet that amplifies every small noise. The ventilation system rattled. The rubbery squeak of the driver's hands on the wheel came and went like a living thing. Somewhere behind us, a zipper was opened and closed in a slow rhythm, like a breath that forgot it needed to keep somebody alive. The radio on the dash crackled once more and caught. Not speech, Not music, a tone. Then faint. So faint I wanted to blame it on the earbud leak from the elderly couple, or the toddler's hum turning into words. The suggestion of a chorus, like voices 6 rooms away, like a church with all its doors shut and everyone inside trying to keep their devotion secret. My phone at 1% threw up a final stubborn rectangle of route data. 217, Inner City Express. Listed stops: McClintock, Haller's Ford, Pine Ridge Overpass, Reston Junction, Riverbend Station. Estimated arrival 5:42. I took a screenshot and watched the deliberately cheerful shutter animation as if it were a magic spell. When the screen went black, my reflection came back in the window, and behind it, the faint double of the driver's reflection, the mouth still moving. The woman in braids slid into the aisle with a hard decision in her shoulders and made her way forward. "Excuse me," she said, loud enough that I heard, but soft enough that people who wanted to sleep could pretend not to. "Are we making an unscheduled stop? The board said direct." The driver didn't turn his head. His hands didn't leave 10 and 2. His mouth kept moving. For a second I thought he wouldn't answer at all, that he couldn't, that something had crawled inside his throat and laid a nest. Then, without shifting, he said, "We always make the stops we're supposed to." "That's not an answer," she said. "It's the only one you're getting," he said, but the words came out backwards, like "Nidig roi eno et stai," like I'd caught them in the mirror and they hadn't turned around yet. My stomach flipped and settled, the way it does at the top of a long hill. She stood there for a heartbeat longer and then returned to her seat. And when she sat down, her hand shook once, a tiny, betraying quake. The hoodie kid slid into the seat across from me and leaned in, eyes bright. "Don't," he said. "Don't fall asleep. They make weird stops at night." "Who does?" "Drivers," he said, almost laughing. "Like it's them, like they decide anything." He tugged at the loose thread on his sleeve. "I read this forum," he added, as if he had to explain everything, as if that's what kids like him had been born to do. "There's a list. Don't sit in the last row, don't turn on the bathroom light after 2, don't look directly at the driver in the reflection, don't look out if you hear singing." "Okay," I said. My voice wasn't mine. It belonged to someone who had learned a script just now and was too polite to put it down. "Just," he swallowed, "stay on, okay?" I thought of the words scratched in the mirror. Stay on. The highway curved and the bus followed like a fish on a line. We passed a lit-up sign for a town name I knew and didn't. The kind of familiarity you get from hearing something mispronounced your whole life. Haller's Ford, the route had said. We did not stop. The driver's mouth opened, closed. The radio made its mouth of static and sang nothing. Sleep still found people, because sleep is greedy and sometimes it wins. The briefcase man slid into the kind of sleep that lets drool escape beautifully. The elderly couple's heads leaned until their foreheads touched like two magnets compelled by a small god. The toddler slumped, and the rabbit slumped with him, ear across his cheek. The mother's fingers tangled in both. I watched all of it with that furious, useless attention we give to things we can't fix. It must have been sometime around 3 when the bus hesitated. I didn't feel the brake. I felt the absence of acceleration, the way a treadmill stops and takes your feet with it. The driver checked his mirrors, not to see us, but to make sure the fact of us was still there. The radio crackled. The chorus had no words I recognized and all the instruction of scripture. We left the interchange lights behind and entered a strip of highway flanked by trees so thick they made the night deeper, as if they yearned to finish what the sky had started. And then the driver flicked his blinker. It was an old-fashioned click-click, so precise I could have counted quilts to it. Out the window, a gap opened in the guardrail, a narrow road that wove down into the dark like a vein. No signage, no streetlight. Just the suggestion of gravel and the memory of a path. The bus took it with a smoothness that suggested practice. In the reflection, the driver's mouth stopped moving. He smiled, except it didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "Excuse me?" The woman in braids started, rising again. But several passengers were already standing. The briefcase man, the construction worker with the sleeping forehead, one of the college kids. They didn't look at each other or at us. They rose like the humming had reached whatever part of them makes decisions. The lavender woman's hand found my wrist. Her fingers were surprisingly strong. "Whatever this is," she whispered, eyes on the aisle, "we're staying on." Outside, the trees leaned in as if they were curious. The bus eased down the narrow road. The headlights caught a leaning post, a suggestion of a sign whose paint belonged to another decade, maybe two. Fog gathered low and loyal, pooling around roots and sleepers. The radio's crackle shivered through the bus like a shiver through a congregation. The driver's mouth began to move again. And somewhere ahead, beyond the veil of the trees, beyond the curve that took the highway out of sight, I thought I saw a glow that wasn't a glow so much as a memory of light. A stop that the route had never listed. A place that had been waiting for us, whether we wanted it to or not. I pressed my forehead to the glass and felt the road hum through my skull like a warning. The road that swallowed us had no business being paved. The bus bounced and groaned like it was driving across the spine of something long buried, every dip and rise threatening to spill the overhead bags onto us. The trees pressed closer, black-green columns, their branches hooking down as if trying to peel the roof away. Nobody spoke, not even the toddler. His hum had gone silent, though I noticed his lips were still moving faintly, as though he was mouthing along to something only he could hear. The rabbit dangled forgotten at his side. The driver's face glowed faintly in the windshield reflection. His smile hadn't changed, hadn't wavered, and the way his lips moved, shaping syllables with no sound, reminded me of the way priests recite prayers behind glass, words only for themselves and whoever might be listening beyond. Then the trees broke. We came to a clearing where the fog lay so thick it looked solid, pooled like milk poured across the ground. The bus slowed, brake pads shrieking, until we lurched to a stop. I pressed my palm against the window. The glass felt strangely warm, as though the air outside was heavier, thicker. And there it was, a bus stop. Not the kind with benches and fluorescent lights and plexiglass walls like I'd grown up with. This was something older. A wooden sign leaned at an angle, its paint long faded, maybe once white, but now the gray of bones. A shelter stood beside it, nothing more than a roof on 4 rotting posts. Someone had carved initials into the wood decades ago, and the letters were swollen with age, unreadable. No light shone, no sound of insects or wind, just the stillness of a photograph. The driver put the bus in park. His hands left the wheel for the first time, folding neatly in his lap. And then people began to stand. First, the briefcase man, his eyes glassy, his steps measured like he was sleepwalking. Then, the construction worker. One of the college students rose too, her phone still glowing in her hand, casting her face blue-white. They didn't look at each other, didn't take their belongings. They just moved down the aisle as if summoned. "Hey! Hey!" the woman in braids hissed, half standing, her hands clenched on the seat in front of her. "Where are you going? This isn't a stop." None of them answered. The lavender woman beside me tightened her grip on her grocery bag, knuckles white. "Stay on," she whispered, repeating the bathroom graffiti, repeating the hoodie kid's warning, repeating something that sounded less like advice and more like a commandment. The bus hissed as the doors folded open. Fog spilled inside, clinging to the floor like it wanted to creep seat by seat. I craned my neck to see outside. Beyond the stop, faint outlines of buildings showed through the mist. An old gas station with a sagging roof, a boarded-up diner, houses with porches eaten by rot. A town that shouldn't be there, not in the middle of the forest, not miles from the highway. The passengers who had stood filed out without hesitation. Their feet hit the gravel with soft crunches that vanished almost immediately into the fog. None of them turned back. The mother with the toddler began to rise too, her eyes distant, lips moving like the driver's had, like the child's still were. The toddler clutched the rabbit tight to his chest now, and his gaze was locked on the glow beyond the stop. "Sit down," the woman in braids snapped, standing fully now, her voice sharp with authority. She reached across the aisle and put a hand on the mother's shoulder. "Whatever this is, you're not taking your kid out there." For a heartbeat, it worked. The mother blinked, awareness flooding back into her face. She sat, trembling, and pulled her son into her lap, whispering apologies into his hair. But 3 more people, faces slack, movements mechanical, shuffled past. Their shoes clattered on the bus steps and were swallowed by the fog. And then the doors closed. The driver shifted the bus back into gear. His mouth was moving again, lips curling around silent words, but this time I thought I could hear something faint behind them, like an echo, like voices carried on a breeze that didn't exist. I looked around. Out of maybe 20 passengers, nearly half the bus was empty now. Their seats looked wrong, too vacant, too immediate, as if the people who'd sat there had never been real. The hoodie kid pulled his drawstrings tight, voice shaking. "This is it. This is how it starts. They don't come back." The woman in braids glared at the front of the bus. "Where the hell did you just take us?" The driver didn't answer. He just pressed down on the accelerator. The bus lurched forward deeper into the fog. But I looked back. Through the rear window, I caught one last glimpse of the stop. Just for a second, the shapes of the passengers who had gotten off appeared in the mist, standing in a neat line, waiting for something. And behind them, more figures were emerging from the town, pale and watchful, their heads turning in unison as our bus pulled away. The driver whispered his chant louder now, lips curling into a soundless smile. And the road ahead narrowed, pulling us further from anywhere that had ever been on a map. The road narrowed until it wasn't a road anymore, just dirt, gravel, and fog pressed close like it had grown out of the ground. The bus rattled and swayed, every bump threatening to throw us from our seats. I gripped the armrest so hard my nails left half moons in the plastic. The driver hummed under his breath now, the first sound he'd made that wasn't words. It was a low, steady tone that didn't match the engine's rhythm. The lavender woman beside me clutched her grocery bag like a life preserver. Then, as sudden as it had begun, the ride ended. The bus jerked once, brakes squealing, and stopped. The headlights cut through the fog, revealing more of that strange little town. The gas station sat on the corner with windows so dirty they were opaque. A row of houses with peeling paint and collapsing porches leaned against each other like drunks. A single street lamp glowed a dull orange, its light swallowed quickly by the mist. The driver shut off the engine. The silence was suffocating. Nobody moved. Then, without looking back, the driver said, "End of the line." The woman in braids stood again. Her voice was sharp, demanding. "This isn't Riverbend. This isn't even on the damn map. You can't just—" The bus doors sighed open. Fog poured in, and people started to move. This time it wasn't half the bus, it was only 3. The elderly couple with the earbuds, still holding hands, still smiling faintly, as though hearing a song only for them, and the man with hands like shovels. They stood, shuffled down the aisle, and stepped off into the mist without hesitation. The hoodie kid whispered, "They're not choosing. It's choosing them." "Sit down!" the woman in braids shouted after them, but they didn't look back. I twisted in my seat, trying to see through the window. The fog shifted just enough for me to glimpse movement, shapes in the street. People, dozens of them. They stood in clusters on the sidewalks, their clothes drab and old-fashioned, their faces pale and soft-edged like worn photographs. Their heads turned in perfect unison as the new passengers stepped off. And then, smiles. Wide, eager smiles that stretched too far. The lavender woman sucked in a sharp breath. "Lord, help us." The mother clutched her boy tighter, rocking slightly, whispering something in his ear, but the child wouldn't look at her. His gaze was fixed outside, his lips still moving silently like he was humming along to something faint in the fog. I glanced at the driver. His lips were still moving too, whispering, praying, singing. I couldn't tell. Then the bus doors closed. The engine didn't restart. We sat in silence for what felt like minutes. No one wanted to be the first to speak. The fog pressed harder against the windows, making the glass sweat. The orange glow of the single street lamp flickered once, twice, then steadied. Finally, the briefcase man's empty seat caught my eye. The bag he'd carried earlier was still there. I leaned across the aisle and pulled it into my lap. My chest tightened as I unlatched the brass clips. Inside, not papers, not files, just clothing. A change of socks, a shirt folded neatly, a toothbrush, no phone, no wallet, no ID, nothing that proved he had ever been someone else. The lavender woman whispered, "He wasn't going anywhere." The hoodie kid leaned in, eyes darting. "That's what I mean. They're not passengers, they're offerings." The bus lights flickered, then went out completely. Only the street lamp outside gave us enough to see each other's pale outlines. The fog glowed faintly in its light, swirling like it was alive. The mother's toddler began to giggle softly, a high, happy sound that didn't belong here. He pointed at the window. I followed his finger. Outside, the pale figures had moved closer. I could see their faces more clearly now. Blank eyes, smiles stretched so far the skin around their mouths cracked like old paint. They were waving. Slowly. All at once. The lavender woman clutched my wrist again. "We can't get off. Promise me." I nodded, though I wasn't sure who I was promising, her or myself. The woman in braids suddenly stood, fists clenched. "Enough! I'm going to the driver!" She stormed up the aisle and slammed a hand on the back of his seat. "You're going to turn this bus around right now! Do you hear me? We're leaving!" The driver didn't answer. She shook his shoulder. His body swayed, limp, as though his bones had been removed. His head lolled back just enough for us to see his face. His lips were still moving. But his eyes were gone. Empty sockets, dark and wet, staring at nothing. The woman stumbled back, gasping, and the bus doors opened again. Outside, the townsfolk began to step forward. Their movements were slow, deliberate, almost reverent. They didn't rush. The hoodie kid hissed, "Don't move. Don't make a sound." But the toddler started to laugh again, loud this time, clapping his hands. The mother pressed her palm over his mouth, tears streaking her face. The townsfolk reached the edge of the bus lights. Their smiles grew wider, and the driver's body in the seat let out a wheezing, hollow sound, like a choir breathing in before the first note. The townsfolk didn't rush the bus. They didn't need to. They simply gathered, dozens of them, their pale faces pressed to the windows. Every pane of glass was framed by those smiles, those wide and waiting eyes. Inside, panic finally broke through the silence. "Close the doors!" the woman in braids shouted, though they were already closed, though the driver sat slumped in his seat, nothing behind his eyelids but wet hollowness. She rushed forward, slamming the panel of buttons on the dashboard. Nothing responded. The doors stayed ajar, groaning on their hinges as if daring someone inside to step down. The lavender woman gripped her grocery bag until the plastic split. "Don't let them in," she whispered, rocking slightly. "Don't let them in. Don't let them in." The hoodie kid was muttering to himself, rapid fire. It's the rules, it's the rules. They said, never get off, never leave the aisle, never. The mother shushed her toddler frantically, but the boy fought her hand, still laughing, still trying to wriggle toward the door. His plush rabbit slipped from his fingers, bouncing into the aisle. He pointed after it, face shining with joy. They're calling me, he whispered in a voice not his own. The lavender woman hissed, Don't you dare! But the mother, trembling, whispered back, I think he has to go. The woman in braids spun on her. Are you out of your mind? Before anyone could stop her, the mother stood, clutching her child tight, and walked toward the open doors. Her eyes were distant again, unfocused. No! The hoodie kid lunged forward, but too late. The mother descended the steps, her toddler pressed against her shoulder. The townsfolk parted like a curtain, opening a path down the street. She walked into them, swallowed by fog until there was nothing left but her child's giggle fading away. Silence. Then the fog itself seemed to breathe, exhaling a faint hum that swelled into a low chorus. It came from everywhere, through the glass, through the floor, through our teeth and bones, a hymn with no words, only long, mournful notes. The empty sockets of the driver's corpse twitched as though the sound was animating him. His lips moved faster, syncing with the choir outside. The lavender woman clamped her hands over her ears, tears streaking her face. Don't listen! Don't listen! But it was too late. My chest tightened, my ribs vibrating as if they wanted to join the song. The woman in braids grabbed my arm, grounding me. Her eyes were fierce, terrified, but sharp. We have to move. We can't stay in here. The bus is theirs now. The town, I whispered. You want us to go into the town? She pointed toward the rear. Back exit. If we go through the doors they're waiting at, we're done. But maybe, just maybe, we can circle around. Get to the road. The hoodie kid scrambled to his feet. Road doesn't work. Didn't you see? It loops. You'll just come back here. Only way out is through. The lavender woman moaned, clutching her broken grocery bag. Powdered sugar from her lemon bars dusted the floor like ash. The woman in braids made the choice for all of us. She marched to the rear, slammed her shoulder into the emergency bar and forced the back door open. Fog spilled in, thick and cloying. Move! She barked. We stumbled after her. Me, the hoodie kid, the lavender woman. The bus groaned behind us, the driver's corpse still mumbling. The choir outside rising louder, triumphant. The fog swallowed us whole. The town appeared piece by piece like a stage being lit. The first building was the diner I'd glimpsed earlier. Its neon sign still clung to the frame, buzzing faintly, but the letters were wrong. They rearranged themselves as I stared. Diner became din, then end, then went dark altogether. Inside, shapes sat at booths, heads bowed, hands folded on the tables like parishioners waiting for grace. Next came the gas station. A flicker of light spilled from the windows. I dared to peek inside. The shelves were fully stocked, but not with anything I recognized. Cans without labels, bottles filled with dark pulsing liquid, rows of jars containing something that looked too much like teeth. The hoodie kid pulled me away, his grip iron. Don't look too long. If you acknowledge it, it notices you. We moved on, our footsteps muffled by the fog. Every house we passed had faces peering from windows, blank-eyed, smiling faces, waiting. Then we reached the church. It loomed at the center of the town, taller than the rest, its steeple stabbing into the fog like a finger pointing toward nothing. The doors were wide open, and from within came the song, full now, rich and terrible. I froze, because I recognized the voices. The briefcase man, the construction worker, the college kid, the elderly couple, the mother, even the toddler's high, sweet giggle woven into the harmony like a bell. The lavender woman dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. It's them, she sobbed. Dear God, it's them. The woman in braids grabbed her shoulders, shaking hard. We keep moving. We don't stop. Do you hear me? We don't stop. But my feet wouldn't move, because at the edge of the churchyard, tacked to a warped bulletin board, I saw something that froze my blood. Photographs. Faded, black and white, edges curling. Faces of every passenger who had gotten off the bus tonight, their names written in neat cursive below each picture. And below them, a blank space. A space big enough for 4 more photographs. Our photographs. The fog pressed heavier the closer we stood to the church. The song inside wasn't just sound, it was a weight, pressing against our ribs, dragging our feet forward in slow shuffles. Every note seemed designed to pull us closer, like hooks buried deep in the chest. The lavender woman was on her knees, sobbing openly now, powder sugar still dusted on her blouse. "I can hear my daughter in there," she whispered. "She's calling me. She's waiting for me. She's..." The woman in braids slapped her hard across the face. "That's not your daughter," she snapped. "That's not anybody's family. That's a trap." The hoodie kid tugged on my sleeve. "It's too late. It's always too late. Nobody gets out after they open the doors. They let us off the bus because they already wrote our names down." But his words didn't ring as final as he wanted. His voice cracked. His fear betrayed him. He wanted to believe it, but a sliver of hope still remained. Through the fog, the shapes of the townsfolk advanced. They didn't run, didn't lunge. They simply walked toward us in unison, step after step, their wide smiles glowing faintly in the pale light. Behind them, the song in the church swelled, welcoming them home, welcoming us. The woman in braids grabbed my wrist. "Run!" We bolted. The church doors stood wide open, yawning like a mouth ready to swallow us whole. From inside, the song poured, low and mournful, yet beautiful in a way that made the hair on my arms rise. The sound had no words, no melody I could trace, but it reached into me, pulling threads I hadn't known existed. It was like remembering a lullaby my mother had sung, except warped, stretched into something endless. I could almost hear her voice in it, sweet and familiar, calling me closer. The lavender woman's sobbing had changed. She wasn't crying anymore. She was laughing through tears. She swayed where she knelt, rocking back and forth, mouthing along with the invisible hymn. "I hear them," she whispered. "My family's in there. They're waiting for me." The hoodie kid pressed his palms hard against his ears. "Don't listen," he hissed, his voice trembling. "That's how it gets you. Don't let it in." But it was already inside. Even with my hands clamped to my head, the song wasn't muffled. It wasn't just sound. It vibrated through the air, through the ground beneath us, through the marrow of my bones. It was in my blood, in my pulse, in the ache of my teeth. Every beat of it coaxed my lips to move, to hum along. Beside me, the woman in braids had her jaw clenched so tight I thought she might crack a tooth. "Focus on me!" she snapped, her voice sharp, grounding. "Don't look at the church, don't listen, eyes on me!" I tried. God, I tried. But my eyes kept slipping back toward those open doors where pale shapes swayed in time with the hymn. I knew the faces inside. The briefcase man, the college girl, the mother and her child. Their mouths were open wide, songs spilling out of them in ribbons of mist. They looked peaceful, too peaceful. The lavender woman stood. She had dropped her grocery bag entirely. Lemon bars lay scattered on the ground like small pale bricks. She stepped forward, arms out, a smile spreading across her face. "No!" The woman in braids lunged, grabbing her sleeve. But the lavender woman twisted free with surprising strength. "Don't you see?" she said, voice dreamy. "It's beautiful. They're safe. We can all be safe." She walked into the fog toward the church without looking back. The hoodie kid started to scream, high-pitched and broken. "She's gone! She's one of them now!" His hands shook against his ears, his eyes bloodshot. It's too late! It's always too late! The woman in braids slapped him hard. The sound cracked through the fog like a gunshot. He blinked, shocked, focus snapping back.
"We run," she said, voice fierce. "We run now, or we join them." We staggered down the street, away from the church, away from that pulling sound. But the hymn followed, echoing from every building, every window, every crooked alley. It was the whole town singing now. The fog seemed alive with it. With every note, shapes appeared in the mist, faces pressed against glass, shadows moving behind curtains. The pale townsfolk emerged again, filing into the street behind us, their smiles fixed, their mouths opening to add more voices to the choir. I clamped my hands harder against my ears, nails digging into my scalp. It didn't help. The song wasn't entering through my ears anymore. It was vibrating up through the soles of my shoes, through the ground itself, humming in my bones. My chest ached with the effort not to sing back. The hoodie kid faltered, dropping to his knees. His lips were moving. He was whispering the notes under his breath. "No!" the woman in braids shouted, dragging him up by his hoodie. "Don't give it air! If you let it out, it takes you!" I tried not to listen, but the sound slipped in anyway, curling around my thoughts like smoke. I could hear my mother's voice inside it again, softer this time. She was singing the lullaby she'd hummed when I was sick as a child, the one about angels watching over. The words weren't there, but the feeling was, wrapping me in a warmth so suffocating I almost let go. One step, then another. My feet felt heavy, leaden, like the road wanted me to stop, to turn around, to walk toward the song and never leave. "Eyes down!" the woman in braids barked, pulling us both. "Don't look, don't listen, just walk!" But we weren't walking anymore, we were running. The town folded in on itself, streets repeating, buildings showing up again and again. We passed the diner twice, the gas station 3 times. No matter how far we ran, the church steeple always pierced the fog behind us, closer than before. And then, suddenly, headlights. A bus stood idling at the edge of the street. Not our bus. It looked the same at first glance, same shape, same pale headlights cutting through the fog, but its paint was faded, peeling, its windows streaked with grime. The route sign above the windshield was blank, glowing faintly with nothing. The doors were open. The engine purred steadily, as if waiting. "There!" the woman in braids shouted. She shoved us toward it. "Move!" The hoodie kid stumbled. "It's not ours, it's wrong, it's not the same bus." "Do you want to stay here?" she snapped back. We scrambled up the steps, breath ragged, lungs burning. Inside, the bus was colder than the fog outside. The seats were all empty, dusted faintly with something that looked like ash. The air smelled like old paper, faintly sweet, faintly rotten. The driver's seat was empty. The wheel turned slowly on its own as though guided by invisible hands. The woman in braids slammed the panel by the door. The doors hissed shut, sealing us in. The engine roared. The bus jolted forward and we lurched back into our seats as it carried us away. Through the windows, the town blurred past. Houses, shops, the diner, the church. Figures stood in the fog, waving as we sped by, their smiles stretching impossibly wide. And still, the song followed. It wasn't outside anymore. It was in the bus. The seats hummed faintly with it, the vibrations sliding into my spine. The lights above flickered in rhythm with the melody. The hoodie kid sobbed into his hands. "It's in me. I can't stop hearing it. I don't want to hear it anymore." The woman in braids leaned against the pole, her face pale but fierce. "Keep fighting it. If we make it past the fog, maybe, just maybe, it'll stop." But I wasn't sure, because even as the bus roared forward, even as the fog thinned and asphalt reappeared beneath us, I realized my lips were moving, silent, repeating the song. The hoodie kid's lips moved too, and when I glanced at the woman in braids,
I swore I saw her jaw twitching in time with the rhythm, though she tried to hide it. The bus barreled onto the highway. Behind us, the town dissolved into mist. The first gray hints of dawn bled into the sky. We were free. But the song was still there, threading through my veins, echoing in the marrow of my bones. I pressed my hands to my mouth, but the hum slipped out anyway, soft and steady. And I knew then, maybe the bus had driven us out of the fog. Maybe we'd escaped the town, but the song was coming with us. It always would. And that was the forgotten stop, the bus ride that should have ended, but never truly does. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to this horror story. Every like, comment, and subscription helps keep this channel alive and growing. It means the world, especially for a new horror channel trying to reach more listeners who love creepy stories, scary bus rides, and unsettling urban legends. Tell me in the comments, would you have stayed on the bus? Or would the song have pulled you off at the forgotten stop? If you enjoyed this tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary story, creepypasta, or paranormal legend. Thank you again for your support, and remember, if the bus ever stops somewhere that isn't on the map, stay seated, stay silent, and never get off.